Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Donald Pfau from the Center of Chiropractic Neurology. Tonight we're going to talk about sugar, whether it's your friend or whether it's your foe. One thing I want to start off with is next month we're going to talk about nutrition labels and fat. I know I had mentioned that we were going to talk about nutrition labels this round, and we might partially, but there's a whole lot more information about sugar that I wanted to kind of shorten our time length, and we'll leave that for next month on the nutrition labels and fat. Okay? So let's get started. Why should we discuss sugar? Well, one of the things is the health risks associated with it, the awareness of what we're consuming, also how to become aware of sugar consumption. It's starting to become a lot more prevalent in foods and we're just not seeing it. So we want to kind of discuss that this evening as well. And there will be a few more other items that we're going to discuss too, such as the diet sugars. Just how much sugar do we actually eat in a year? Well, back in the 1700s, the average person consumed around 4 pounds of sugar a year. That doesn't seem that bad. The way they did their processing sugar back then was not as advanced as the technology is today. In the 1800s, the average person consumed 18 pounds of sugar per year. Kind of starting to creep up a little bit, isn't it? So then in 1900, individual consumption had risen to 90 pounds of sugar a year. In 1900, individual consumption had risen to 90 pounds of sugar per year. So in 2009, more than 50% of Americans consumed half a pound of sugar per day. That is a lot. To give you an idea, this translates into a whopping 180 pounds per year. 18 of those sugar bags you see on the right, those are 10-pound bags. 18 of those. Basically, I weigh 200 pounds, so 19 of those for those of you that kind of want a rougher idea. So where is all this sugar? Where is all this sugar? You know, we're not sitting there eating those physical bags of sugar. Soft drinks is number one. If you can kind of see, you go to the gas stations, sodas are getting larger and larger and larger. You know, it's kind of ridiculous when you walk in and you got a nice 44-ounce soda, you know, and the amount of sugar that it contains. Coke, for example. There are 54 grams of sugar in Coke. Now, we use grams and everything else when we talk about nutrition and nutrition labels and things like that, but as Americans, we're used to teaspoons, tablespoons, ounces, things like that. Let's give you an idea. 4 grams is actually 1 teaspoon of sugar. So if you've got 54 grams of sugar inside of one 20-ounce bottle of Coke, the math on that is roughly 13 times 4 is 52. 13 teaspoons, just a little more than 13 teaspoons of sugar in one bottle of Coke. Like, great. So if you start moving that way, you got the cherry flavor, then you've got the green Coke. I've never seen that, but I suspect that it is one of those drinks such as like the Gatorade, the G2, which has reduced sugar, but they also have artificial sugar in there as well. That's pretty bad for you, and it'll be clear later when we discuss that. So then we move on to the Diet Coke and the Zero Coke. Those have artificial sweeteners in there. So the next batch of where is all this sugar is fruit juices, sweetened beverages, sports drinks, processed foods, bologna, salad dressing, pretzels, Worcestershire sauce, cheese spreads. They're like, well, why don't I taste the sugar inside of things like pretzels? Because basically they'll use sugar as like a filler. They'll use corn syrup as a filler. That's why you don't really see it. You'll see it in the ingredient list, but it is everywhere. Did you know that most ketchup in the store contains sugar? It's usually in the form of high fructose corn syrup, and thankfully some of the ketchup industry has turned around and they're saying, well, no high fructose corn syrup, but there's still sugar in the ingredient list. And it's kind of like, well, are you really doing anybody a favor by putting more sugar in there? Because sugar acts on your taste buds, and the sweeter things taste, we tend to eat a little bit more of that. This Heinz ketchup, I'm not picking on Heinz, it's just one of the examples that comes up though. If you got 4 grams of sugar, which is a teaspoon, times 33 servings is 132 grams of sugar, or 33 teaspoons. The average daily recommended allowance for women for sugar is only 6 teaspoons. Did you also know that, for example, infant formula, look at one of the first ingredients over there is corn syrup solids. That's actually has the equivalent of the sugar of 1 can of Coca-Cola inside of this. You don't want to feed your babies sugar and Coca-Cola. I don't think that would be very good for their health. So, salad dressings, they contain quite a bit of sugar, usually in the form of high fructose corn syrup. They don't use it just for sweetener, but they'll use it for filler like we were talking about earlier. Just start looking inside of your fridge. You'll see different things. Look in your pantry. You've got crackers. You've got hot dogs. Not that hot dogs are great for you, but they sure do taste good, but still they contain corn syrup solids, which are fillers, sweeteners to make you want to eat more. Meat sticks, diet foods that contain the word light, fat-free, low-fat, usually contain quite a bit of sugar. It's kind of ironic that portion sizes have gotten longer. This, for example, this poster has been around for a little bit. They don't have this out anymore, but Kentucky Fried Chicken used to have something where you could get a mega mug, and then they would donate $1 to the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. That's got a lot of irony right in there. No wonder there's a diabetes epidemic. There's more diabetes in this country than any other time in history. It's pretty sad when you go to Walgreens and there's a dedicated diabetes aisle. That says a lot about where we're taking our health. Some statistics for you. 32% of Americans are obese. An additional 1/3 are overweight. I put this picture of this child up because it shows that we, as families, sometimes don't know what we're eating, what our children are eating, and things like that, things that we think are healthy. Some stuff is just spiraling and getting out of control. In 1893, there were fewer than 3 cases of diabetes per 100,000 people in the U.S. Today, diabetes strikes almost 8,000 out of every 100,000 people. So how do we tell the difference between all these sugars and sweeteners? We're going to do a basic review, kind of talk about some artificial sweeteners first, and then we'll go into talking about sugars as well. Let's start with the easy stuff. The carcinogenic, cancer-causing things. For example, you have Equal, Splenda, and Sweet and Low. Sweet and Low is carcinogenic. The lab studies have showed it. Equal is carcinogenic. Splenda has also been shown to be carcinogenic. Sucralose, which is a cover name for Splenda, or vice versa, is not a sugar, even though it's a deceptive slogan is made from sugar. You can actually make charcoal and explosives from sugar, but are you going to put made from sugar on those? Doesn't make sense, does it? Splenda, which is sucralose, is a chlorinated artificial sweetener in line with aspartame and saccharin with detrimental health effects to match. Now we're going to talk about the sugar alcohols. You tend to see those in gum and some of the candies. So there's things like xylitol, glycerol, sorbitol, maltitol, mannitol, and erythritol. Ethanol is not a sugar, it's an alcohol. But whenever you see the OL, that typically designates some type of alcohol, so you can have a sugar alcohol. A lot of these are becoming popular as sweeteners and not just popular in gum anymore. These are incompletely absorbed in the intestines. So then you end up getting problems with bloating, diarrhea, and flatulence. We're going to move on to the sugars now. The simple sugars are also called monosaccharides. So you've got dextrose, glucose, and fructose. Glucose and dextrose are one and the same sugar. Most food manufacturers will use the name dextrose in their ingredient list instead of glucose. The primary difference is how does your body metabolize each simple sugar. Simple sugars combine to form more complex sugars like table sugar. These complex sugars are called disaccharides. Basically, it just means 2 of the monos. So mono is 1, di is 2. The disaccharide right here is sucrose, which is 50%, and sucrose is 50% glucose and 50% fructose, but they're bound together. That makes table sugar, which is sucrose. However, all sugars are not created equal. Some sugars you might know, they might be odd, some might not be so odd. Honey, for example, is 53% fructose, but it's completely natural in its raw form, and it's loaded with health benefits and antioxidants. But one of the things about honey we got to be careful of is sometimes it is also processed too, where they heat it up, they'll strip all the pollen out of it, all the other good stuff, and you're basically left with glucose and fructose separated inside of the honey, and it makes it worse for you. So I tell people when you're buying honey, look for your local beekeeper, ask to what extent they process their honey. You want to try to get it basically just raw as you can get it. I do raise honey myself, or honeybees, and make honey, and run it through a screen and keep it as pure as we can. Agave syrup is another odd sugar that we kind of see in the store and we think it's healthy, and it's really not. It's falsely advertised as natural, but is typically highly processed, and usually it's 80% fructose. The end product doesn't even remotely resemble the original agave plant. Stevia is actually a highly sweet herb from South America and is completely safe. The thing about stevia is you got to be careful, is sometimes it's processed. One of the earlier slides, there was something called Truvia. There's a couple other different ones where it's actually processed. It's the processing that actually kind of strips the good benefits of eating it naturally. Lohan, I've never really seen that in the store, but apparently out in Europe and Asia, they've got that. It's another sweetener, kind of like stevia, but it's derived from fruit instead. High fructose corn syrup is 55% glucose and 45% fructose. So even though the components are the same, it is not the same as table sugar. The TV commercials of the Corn Refiners Association likes to try to tell you and make you believe that they are. Sugar is sugar. Not really. Let's explain why. So who's the bad guy? It isn't glucose. Glucose is a form of energy used by every cell in your body. Your brain eats it, every bacterium, and in fact, every living thing on earth uses glucose for energy. You cannot survive without it. As a country, though, sucrose, which is the table sugar, is no longer the sugar of choice. It's becoming fructose because of the prevalence of the high fructose corn syrup in everything. Well, isn't fructose good for you because it's called the fruit sugar? It isn't the fructose itself that's bad. It's the massive doses that we're starting to eat it in that make it dangerous. You know, it's just, we're exposed to it everywhere in the store. So in vegetables and fruit, the fructose is mixed in with the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients, and the fiber that help moderate the negative metabolic effects of fructose. I put this picture up here to kind of give you an idea that you should be eating raw fruits and vegetables. If you got to eat some of the vegetables cooked, lightly steam them or whatever, we'll talk about that later on how to manage your sugars. But this is kind of a nice picture, kind of a bunch of raw fruits and vegetables. Processing foods strip the fiber away as well as the beneficial things that make fruits and vegetables healthy to eat. For example, you think this naked juice, mango juice, is going to be good and nutritious for you, but when you strip everything out of it, you end up basically with sugar. 2 servings inside of that bottle and you end up with 15 teaspoons of sugar. So if you drink half that bottle, which is 7.5, you're already over your daily allowance if you're a woman. To make matters worse, the very products that people rely on to lose weight, the fat diet foods, are usually the ones that are highest in fructose. It says low fat, fat-free, this and that. Fat really isn't the culprit, but that's next month's topic. It's the sugar and the fructose. So why is fructose so damaging to our bodies? Your body metabolizes fructose in a very different way than glucose. The entire burden of metabolizing fructose falls on your liver. Your liver has a big job, and when you're constantly exposing those massive doses of fructose to the liver, you end up giving yourself metabolic issues, and we're going to talk about a few more of those. People are consuming fructose in enormous quantities, which has made the negative effects more profound. The explosion of soda consumption is actually one of the major causes. However, you still need to take a look through your refrigerator, your cupboards, your kitchen, and you'll still see the prevalence of all the different sugars and fructose. Today, 55% of sweeteners used in food and beverage manufacturing are made from corn. The number 1 source of calories in America is soda in the form of high fructose corn syrup. Food and beverage manufacturers began switching their sweeteners from the sucrose to corn syrup, which is labeled as HCFS, in the 70s when they discovered that high fructose corn syrup not only was far cheaper to make, but it was also about 20% sweeter than conventional table sugar, which is sucrose. HCFS is definitely the bad guy. It contains the same two sugars as sucrose, but is more metabolically risky to you due to its chemical form. The fructose and glucose are not bound together in corn syrup as they are in table sugar. Your body doesn't have to break it down. Therefore, fructose is actually absorbed immediately by your liver. So when you take in corn syrup or soda, that fructose hightails it and gets absorbed and goes right to the liver itself, where table sugar actually has to be broken down. After eating fructose, most of the metabolic burden rests on your liver. That, like I said, that's not the case with glucose. The liver only breaks down 20% of the glucose, and the rest of the body's cells utilize or burn it up. So where does all this fructose go once you consume it? It goes under your thighs. If you're a guy, it might go to your belly. Basically, it gets turned into fat, VLDLs and triglycerides. This means more fat deposits throughout your body. It's actually cheaper for the body to take sugar and convert it into a fat molecule than to take a fat molecule, break it down, and restore it as fat. It's just not efficient. So your body would rather take the sugar. Oh, it's cheaper. Take a bunch of these. Let's make a fat cell with it. Eating fructose is far worse than eating fat for those reasons I just explained. Okay, let's talk about a little biochemistry here. Fructose actually turns off your appetite control system. It doesn't appropriately stimulate insulin, which helps regulate hunger or I'm full hormones. Therefore, you end up eating more and developing insulin resistance. Fructose rapidly leads to weight gain, abdominal obesity, decreased good cholesterol, increased LDL, elevated triglycerides, elevated blood sugar, and high blood pressure. That becomes classic metabolic syndrome. Next month, we are going to talk about cholesterol a little bit and fat. That cholesterol actually is good for you, but we'll save that as a teaser for next month. Okay, but there's more. If you consume soda, you can actually, down the road, get something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. They've had documentation and studies of people that actually have never drank a drop of alcohol in their week, but they've went into liver failure because of all the sodas they consumed and everything else to give them the fatty liver disease. Fructose also elevates uric acid levels, so you can actually get gout without drinking alcohol, just from consuming all the corn syrup and the fructose. One of the more recent findings that surprised researchers is glucose actually accelerates fructose absorption. This makes the potential risk more profound. This doesn't mean glucose is bad because it's going to be bound in with the fructose or floating around with it, but the two together, the glucose kind of says, well, let's go down this hallway instead, and actually accelerates it. So you can kind of see now why fructose is the number one contributing factor to the obesity epidemic. However, in addition, sugar sensitization makes the problem worse. Sugar activates its own pathways in the body, and those metabolic pathways become what they call upregulated. This means that the more sugar you eat, the more effective your body is at absorbing it, and the more you absorb, the more damage you'll do. So then you become sensitized to sugar as time goes on, and you become more sensitive to its toxic effects as well. Goes to say, if you overburden something such as your liver or your pancreas or anything else, it's going to start breaking down. So you start becoming more tired, sluggish, irritable. You start having liver and kidney problems, gut problems, increased blood pressure, and so on. But however, don't despair. There is a flip side. Sugar sensitization rapidly decreases, and these pathways become downregulated when you give yourself a brief no sugar holiday. That's about a couple of weeks. Researchers show that even 2 weeks without consuming sugar will cause your body to be less reactive to it. That's a good thing. So there is a way out. You can try it yourself. Try to take a 2-week sugar sabbatical and see how you feel. It's going to be a little difficult at first, but you just stick with it. Load up your refrigerators with more meat, more vegetables, things like that. All right, let's go on then. It's like, well, fructose, well then, are fruits good or are they bad for you? As a whole fruit, they contain the vitamins, the antioxidants, and the minerals that you need. That's good for you because your body has to kind of work to extract things and things like that. That's good because the body has to actually extract what it needs. When you strip it away and make juice, you end up losing a lot of antioxidants, and manufacturers will add corn syrup. That's just as bad as soda. Some of those juices out there are just awful. So how much fructose is okay to eat without screwing up our bodies? Below 25 grams a day. The daily average is about 70 grams a day. This is 300% above the recommended limit. I'd almost be curious if that is still increasing with the amount of soda everybody is drinking. I talk with some of my patients that come through, and one of my standard questions is, how much soda do you drink a day, if you drink soda? And I'm hearing answers, 5 or 6 cans of soda a day, 3 to 4, 6, 8. It's kind of crazy that we're not even drinking water anymore either. Now that we have all this information, what do we do? Once I tell people, start reading the ingredient labels. Do not make any exceptions. Read every label. You need to create that awareness by reading those labels. If there's high fructose corn syrup or corn syrup on the list, don't buy it. See if you can find a brand that doesn't contain it. If sugar is one of the first 4 ingredients, don't buy it. If you can't pronounce the ingredient, you probably shouldn't be eating it. If your grandma doesn't know what it is, you probably wouldn't want to eat that either. So you also don't want to try not to buy processed foods. You want to cook more often at home using staples. What I tell people is when you go grocery shopping, walk around the perimeter of the store. That's typically where your staples are. Your produce and vegetables along one area, your meats along another. I know some stores have gotten sneaky and they'll make the ice cream aisle as one of the borders. It's not fair. Anyway, you want to pretty much stay to the outside because what they find is all the inside aisles are all the packaged goods, and those are all the processed foods, which contain a lot of sugar, such as we mentioned with the crackers and everything else. You do want to watch your food intake. You eat an orange, an apple, things like that. Some people tell you, 7, 8 servings of fruit a day. It's pretty hard to do. But if you're eating an apple or an orange, a day and maybe a couple of them, that is all right. If you're sitting there drinking fruit juice, thinking you're getting your fruit, you're not. You're actually doing your body a disservice. You want to completely eliminate soda, including the fruit juices. You also want to eliminate diet soda and sweetened beverages. Some of those health waters are coming out now, and they actually have artificial sweeteners or even sweeteners, or natural sweetener, and it's really not. So if the only ingredient on the juice label, if you're drinking juice, says 100% juice, then it's okay. Don't get the one that says from concentrate or contains something else besides the juice. You might as well consider getting a juicer and you make your own juice. You can add a little bit of honey to sweeten it up, or you can drink it plain. You can actually buy pure glucose, which is dextrose, for about $1 a pound. This actually has 0 grams of fructose. I don't think they really sell pure glucose and dextrose in the store. I've never really seen it, but I think you can find it on Amazon and have bulk orders of it shipped. You can also see if some of the health food stores might contain it as well. You want to avoid beer, which raises uric acid levels like fructose. All right, next we're going to talk about why our diet soda is bad for you. We're going to have a little dialogue about this. Diet sodas contain a variety of different artificial sweeteners, anywhere from aspartame to saccharin, You know, we have the different names, sucralose, you know, what's the other one? Sweet and low, and the blue one, equal, things like that, where studies have showed all the way back in the 70s that these items were causing cancer in animals, and then those studies would get buried, you know, and then, oh yeah, 1 year this is okay, the next year it's bad. Now, the studies are still showing, yes, it's still carcinogenic, it's still causing problems, but what they're finding now is that these artificial sweeteners are also called, they are actually neurotoxic, which cause nervous system issues, especially in women. There's been a study that showed that women that they thought had MS, they took diet soda out of their diet and all their symptoms went away. So it goes to say that these diet sugars have to play a role of some sort with our nervous system, that they aren't really used the way we use sugar. They're actually detrimental to your nervous system itself. So that is one of the reasons why diet sodas are actually bad for you. I was pretty shocked, I mentioned it earlier, but when I came across Gatorade, I used to love Gatorade, and one of the products they came out with was G2, which was, it had corn syrup and it had the diet sugars in there too. And I'm like, well, if that's not a chemical storm, you know, then what is? So, you know, it's unfortunate because we as the public don't know what we're drinking, what we're eating, things like that. We're told, oh yeah, it's good for you. And we just have to become more aware of it. So, I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me tonight, and I hope you all got a lot of information. Feel free to text or email me with any questions you might have. I've got my email there. I've got my website. You can check out my website, and you can find me on Facebook as well under the Center of Chiropractic Neurology. Like it, and then once a month I'm going to start doing some more of these talks, so that way we can kind of better educate ourselves as to what we eat and how we live our lives. Have a good evening.